Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the ACC with Mike McDaniel from ESPN Blacksburg. And Mike, as we go through the bowl schedule and get toward some of the bigger games on New Year's Day, the ACC has already played 7 times. We've got Pitt on the field right now at the Sun Bowl against Stanford as an underdog, but with a 6-point lead in the third quarter. The ups have been for the conference, obviously, the performance of Clemson at the top. And I don't think there's a conference in college football where the number one team is as far and away the number one top team as with Clemson in the ACC. But aside from that, the conference got off to a rough start with Georgia Tech losing big to Minnesota, Miami going down big to Wisconsin, but has rallied since as Duke had a similar situation, as did Wake, in being a lower level 6-6, 7-5 type Power 5 team taking on a group of 5 and winning those football games. Duke playing an exceptional second half with 42 straight points. Wake Forest winning a really good game with Memphis. We see Virginia Tech going down to Cincinnati, but in a tight game, 35-31. Maybe the surprise and most impressive performance was Virginia shutting out South Carolina. And that's pretty much the run of the ACC right now. What do you take from the conference's performance to date?
I think it's been fine. I think it's, the demise of the ACC this year, I think, was greatly exaggerated. I think you look at this conference, there were a lot of good teams, but there's only one great team, and that's Clemson. And I think because you see traditional powers in the ACC down, like a Virginia Tech, like a Florida State, like a Miami, you assume that the entire conference is bad. But, you look over at some of the teams who have kind of performed at least to expectations who have exceeded expectations. I think Wake Forest, given all that they lost last year, especially quarterback and John Wolford, the fact they were able to storm back in the second half of the year, get to bowl eligibility, I think that's a really positive story for the ACC. Georgia Tech had a really rough start to the season, but played exceptional football the second half of October and into November, got themselves back to bowl eligibility. Not the greatest showing in the bowl game, obviously, but they were able to get to a bowl game, which didn't look likely, at least at the start of the season when they got off to such a rough start. Virginia Tech, really rough November in particular, but won their rivalry game, won the game against Marshall, got themselves to bowl eligibility. I think that's important. You look at Clemson and what they were able to do. So, I understand that everybody predicted Clemson to be in the position they're in to go back to a national championship, but you think back to September when they were still kind of shuffling quarterbacks around, they didn't look like a national championship level team at that point in time. They had the talent, sure, and on paper, they were definitely one of the 2 or 3 best teams in college football, but they weren't performing to expectations. And you just look at the leap that Trevor Lawrence has taken, and it was expected. We knew he was going to be good, but the fact that he stepped in and performed the way that he has on the national stage in the second half of the season and into the playoff, that's a really strong note for the ACC. And I think that, you take a look at some of the coaching decisions that have been made across the conference. Paul Johnson retires. I think Georgia Tech makes a great under the radar hire with Jeff Collins. I think he'll instill a really strong defense there in Atlanta. I think the offense will be improved. It's going to take a year or 2, but I think Georgia Tech will be very good moving forward. I think with Mark Richt surprise retirement, having Manny Diaz return to Miami, he's been an excellent recruiter there. The defense continues to be very good. And I think if he makes the right hires on the offensive side of the football, I think Miami can be back a lot sooner than people think, just given the talent that they already have. So I think the conference is in a really good spot moving forward. I love the Louisville hire with Satterfield. I think that's going to be great for the conference. I think he'll bring a really powerful team back. Louisville's got all the facilities. We know about their new stadium renovations that they've had over the last couple of years, and they still have some talent on that football team, and they can definitely recruit. So the ACC is still in a really good spot. Willie Taggart's been good at Florida State. I know it was kind of up and down this year, but you saw at times like how the level to which Florida State could play is what a lot of people expected it to be in portions of games throughout the year. So if they're able to put it all together with the talent that they have, give Taggart another year, I think Florida State can be pretty good. So I think the conference is definitely on the upward swing. At least we see how they're performing in bowl season. I know it's been kind of an up and down year for the conference as a whole, but overall, I think they're in a pretty good spot. And, you mentioned it kind of off the top with Virginia's performance against South Carolina in the bowl game. That was super impressive what Bronco Mendenhall has been able to do. So I think the ACC is certainly making strides in the right direction. I think Clemson has an excellent chance to win the national championship next Monday night. As good as Alabama is, I think Clemson can match up with them on both sides of the football and at many of the skill positions. So it's going to be really interesting to see, when it all shakes out, when all these bowl games conclude, where we kind of stack the ACC against the rest of college football come season's end. But it's been a rough season for the conference, but certainly not something that they can't come back from. I think there's a lot of steps being taken in the right direction, really since Thanksgiving, even considering some of these coaching hires.
And Mike, while trying to run through the conference's postseason performance off the top of my head, I went right by the number 2 seed in the maybe most impressive performance from a start to finish perspective compared to what they've been for the past 10 or 15 years. And that's Syracuse. Beating West Virginia 34-18. And of course, let's not go through personnel losses on the West Virginia side in particular, because we don't know what would have happened had Will Grier and company been there, their best left tackle who's headed to the NFL, and 2 of their top 3 wide receivers. They went on the field, and Syracuse outplayed them in the fourth quarter to win the game to finish a 10-3 season. And so my new count is the ACC's 5-3 in postseason play.
Yeah, I forgot about Syracuse, and how can we? It's Syracuse's first 10-win season since the early 1990s, I believe. So, I mean, Dino Babers has that program turned around. They kind of hit a couple bumps there in October, but they had a really strong finish to the year. Obviously, the Notre Dame game is what it is, but outside of that, they played some really strong football down the stretch, and they were really good this year too in the Atlantic Division. So Dino Babers, I mean, he could coach your local high school team to 12 wins in his first season. The guy's unbelievable the way he turns around programs.
No doubt about that. Syracuse with its first double-digit winning season, actually since 2001. Top 10 finish that could result, I think you're thinking back to, it was like 1992. Yep. It's pretty incredible what's happened there. All right, to Mike McDaniel from ESPN Blacksburg helping us break down the ACC and Virginia Tech. Mike, we hope you have a great start to your 2019, and hopefully we'll catch you soon.
Absolutely, Mark. Thanks.